Please welcome Mr. Gregg Prentice to the First Coast Tea Party.
Thank you all so much. I'm humbled with the turnout. I really appreciate you coming. It's excuse me. First time I got emotional. It's nice to see other people care about our elections, right? It's way too important to let what's been going on continue. I really appreciate y'all spending your time this evening. You heard a lot about the background. We've got a couple hundred folks in Hillsborough. We've been finding so much that we're volunteer constrained. We don't have enough people to do everything that needs to be done to get back on track anytime soon. So I got started 3 years ago, and a group of us, there were 3 or 4 of us in that presentation. We started a leadership group, and we started getting volunteers. And then once we started digging into it, we found a whole bunch of issues there in Hillsborough. And then some of the things we were doing, felons on the voter roll, you'll see those, have statewide implications. Hillsborough is not limited for having the felons on the vote. So like I mentioned, True the Vote, if you haven't signed up with them, they've just revamped their website. You can go there and sign up on their homepage. It's truethevote.org. Now, I'm just a representative for them in Hillsborough, but they're looking for volunteers nationwide. And there's about 20 or 30 groups that have started up here in Florida, and we need to get groups going in most all the counties. All the counties would be great. This is another one of the slides of some of the points off their website. The last point, I think we probably all agree with. It's our job as citizens to find where we can each make an impact. Now they're doing also multiple things. True the Vote: voter registration, election integrity, community team building, the voter registry research, working the polls, and legislative advocacy. And it's another big need we have in Hillsborough. We've got some gaping holes in our laws, election law, that you'll be hearing about. Now, True the Vote, how many have heard about the out-of-court settlement True the Vote's had with Ohio and Indiana just this year? Anybody? Yeah. So that's one good, you sign up with True the Vote and you'll get this information from them that's not being published by the mass media. Anybody else concerned about the mass media not publishing things you're concerned about? So True the Vote a couple of years ago, had sued Indiana and Ohio over having voter rolls where the number of registrations in the counties exceeded the census. And those were the 2 biggest states in the nation with the biggest part of the problem. And so True the Vote settled them. And y'all been hearing about the progress Judicial Watch has been making lately, right? Mm-hmm. Fast and Furious, the IRS gate. It seems like Judicial Watch is everywhere. Well, Judicial Watch and True the Vote paired up in these court cases, and both states realized, once the process started, the court case started, that they were dead to rights. They hadn't dead to rights. And so both states settled out of court, and these are the 2, articles this year. So on the left side is the Ohio. In January, they settled out of court with major concessions, including legislative changes. The governor's committing to legislative changes along with the Division of Elections for pushing for it. So True the Vote's been making progress. I've been hoping they'd turn their focus here, but it hasn't quite happened yet. If we can all get in touch with them, maybe we can encourage them to help us with Florida next. California's a real good one. If you want to write down the website here, this is a good one to take a look at. ElectionIntegrityProject.com on the lower right-hand corner. And they've got a report that they've done this past, I think it was either summer or spring. And one of the big points there is out of HAVA. Y'all heard about the law HAVA, right? No. And one of the things that was out of the hanging chads out of Florida, right? We had all the trouble here. And so this is the law that came out of that, trying to improve things so that kind of thing wouldn't happen. One of the things that it specified was that every state had to have a statewide voter roll. Because up to that point, many states were just managing on the county level, right? And wasn't any consistency, and people dual voting, and not getting cleaned up. So they wanted every state. Well, as of today, California, our most populous state, is the only state that is still not compliant with HAVA. And Obama Holder keep on giving them extensions. They've been getting extensions. Now, what is this? It's like 10, 12 years later, and they still don't have a statewide voter roll. So you've probably been hearing about intrastate, interstate folks that are registered to vote in 2 states or more. Well, in California, they still have that problem on a county level, where if somebody moves from one county to another, and then they end up with both their, that's assuming they're honest about it, that the cause was honest, where they've got multiple registrations in each county, and they still don't have any. It's like 2 or 3 years now that the current plan is the one they think they're going to have a statewide voter roll in California. I'm an IT guy. I can tell you, it doesn't take 15 years to build a voter roll. Matter of fact, you got 49 other choices across the nation. You can pick one up tomorrow. Voter fraud. How many people have heard voter fraud's not real? Never happens, right? Right. Next time you hear that, point them to this website. rnla.org. Okay, this is a website that lists. What they did was a survey of they across each state, identifying the voter fraud prosecutions and convictions across the nation. And it wasn't even exhaustive. All they were doing was looking for it. Once they found 5 or 10 in the state, they'd move on to the next state. So on this one here, you'll see paragraphs on the left that are a couple hundreds, 250 paragraphs, leading into articles and links to original court documents across the nation over the last 5 to 10 years, as all these news items have occurred. And on the right side, you can actually go in by state. Florida has 20 to 30 reports of voter fraud, of prosecuted or investigated voter fraud on this website. And I'm confident this is just the tip of the iceberg. So current status of elections in Florida. Talking about voter fraud's not real and that kind of thing. Well, the folks that say that, apparently, if you look at the article on the left, the Miami-Dade Police Benevolent Association begs to differ. How many heard that the Miami-Dade Police Benevolent Association, for this last fall, put up a $10,000 reward for the information leading to the conviction for voter fraud in Miami? Right? Anybody hear about it? All right. Very good. We got one person that had heard about it. So you think about that. The police think that it's such an important, that they're putting up the $10,000, and it's not limited. It wasn't just like a one-time thing. They left it open-ended. I haven't heard, as to whether anybody had started, trying to claim it or not. But for me, it indicates that the police in Miami think it's a big deal. Who are we to disagree, right? We mentioned a moment ago about the cross-state registration. A similar group to what we're trying to get started here in Florida, a statewide effort, but that's another one that you can look up. If you just look up that Voter Integrity Project in North Carolina, you'll find it. And they had done an analysis this past spring and summer where they were identifying thousands of dual registrations, voter registrations, between North Carolina and Florida. So that's just thousands in one pair, right? And out of those, they had identified hundreds that voted in both states in 2012. And then of those, a significant portion have property in both states where the mailing addresses for the two properties point to the other property, right? So it's pretty much a guaranteed thing that the voter registrations match too, right? It's the same person. It's not just John Smith, pointing their property records are pointing the same direction. So a few months back, this late summer, I went and ran some numbers for Florida. If you take a look on here, I didn't look to see where Duval was. Anybody see it? First one to find it?
On the bottom.
2/3 down on the left.
On the left,
Right
I see
under
it.
Charles.
All right. So 106% according to this. Now what I've done here, I try to be totally transparent. This is data from the U.S. Census from 2010. And the U.S. Census, their actuaries and stuff, they bump it up to 2013, 2014. I don't know if I have my date down here or not. Division of Elections is 14, but I think this was 2013 was their numbers for the census. And they estimated for growth up to 2013. And then I've backed off. The articles say there's like 1.5 million felons in Florida and a 3 to 4% adult illegal citizen, non-citizens, right? And so those numbers would be included in the census. So I've reduced the census for the felons and the non-citizen estimates, okay? But if you look at the number, look at the upper right-hand corner where it's got a 72%. Nationwide, it's estimated on the web, if you look at it, it's a 72% registration rate nationwide. And right below it, if these numbers are anywhere near accurate, we've got 3.4 million too many registrations in Florida today, right? Now, I'm like transparent. I want to be transparent. If Florida may have a higher registration rate than the national average because of retirees, right? It would make sense. Retirees moving down, we'd have a higher registration rate. But if you look in the middle there, the state's average is 98.3%. Y'all see that? Right here. The state average for all counties is 98% registration. What's the chance that that's right? I mean, is that valid in anybody's mind? Can't be. It's impossible, right? So we got a problem. I mean, if I'm 90% wrong, we've still got 350,000 too many registrations. Can you win an election with 350,000 registrations?
Sure.
There you go. Now, another caveat, like I said, I try to be transparent. When I take off the percentage for the illegals and the felons, that's just flat percentage across all the counties. So individual county numbers here may slide a little bit. There might be a higher per capita felon rate, higher number of felons per capita in one county versus another county. So there may be some fluctuation here, but the overall state picture, it's pretty clear. All right, so some additional facts about our current situation here in Florida. That first point we just talked about. In Hillsborough, we started looking into this. We have 25,000 registrations in Hillsborough that haven't voted in 10 years. Well, if you haven't voted in 10 years, and I can find it, a crook can find it too. If you were to steal a vote, would you steal mine, who votes every election no matter what? Or would you steal somebody that hasn't voted in 10 years? Right? Which one are you going to pick? So, another thing, I mentioned earlier, thousands of felons on the state voter roll. So, this has been an ongoing issue that we've been working with the Division of Elections since for the last 2 years, over 2 years now, summer of 2012. But one of the things they're giving us feedback on as an example of one of our gaping holes in the law is the Division of Elections today, when the felons go into get their new driver's license, they get released from prison and they go in to sign up for a driver's license, and they just get asked, are you a felon? Or, do you want to vote? Well, yeah, and are you a felon? They don't check the checkbox that says they're a felon. Well, it's not getting checked. What happens is the whole process essentially just rubber stamps that person. It's like this innocent until proven guilty, just to get people quickly as possible onto the roll. Well, that's okay maybe 5 weeks before the election, but it's not okay today, right? Should we be just slapping somebody onto the roll today for the election in 2016? No, we should be figuring out what's going on. Well, the way the process works today, they don't try to figure out whether a new registrant is a felon or not until 5 to 6, 8 weeks later, and then they're missing thousands. We're finding thousands. It's one of the research efforts that you can help with if you're interested, and anybody that you know can help with. A lot of these projects are things that people can do from the comfort of their home over the web, or you can do on your own in your own counties. And we'll be talking about some more of those projects. But on this one, we're doing research to confirm. We've got a list of matches between the Division of Elections and the Department of Corrections. Name, full name, dates of birth, matches. And then from those, we go to the clerk of the court website where they were adjudicated, where they were tried, and confirm that they were adjudicated guilty. Because once you're adjudicated guilty, that's when you lose your right to vote. So the one problem this slide's trying to point out is that the process is broken. We're letting the folks onto the voter roll, assuming a governmental bureaucrat process is going to keep the felons and get them removed, right? And it's failing. And it's been failing for years. I just recently found an article pointing out that this problem existed in 2008. And it probably was before then, but the article goes back that far. I know it from 2012. But it's been going on for 6 years minimum now. Where, when you get a jury summons, you can get an excusal if you're dead. They don't want you to serve. And then if you're a felon or a non-citizen, those are excuses that you can give. But the law in Florida only requires, another excuse, if you've moved out of county. So if you get a summons from Duval County, county court, if you've moved out of county, well, then you can write back and say, hey, I moved, I don't have to serve, and they give you the excusal here for Duval. Well, the law specifically only requires that the clerk send the supervisor of elections the excusal if you've moved out of county. The other excusals aren't required to be forwarded, and so they don't. I'm only aware of one county in the state where the supervisor is proactively pursuing the juror excusals for felon and for non-citizen claims. And we just found this out later this summer. For 2 years we've been assuming that as we were looking, when you register to vote, you register your address, and that's what drives your ballot in the races you get to vote in. And then you can register a mailing address, right? If you want your correspondence from the supervisor to go to this business address or a post office box or whatever. Well, late this fall, we found out that what we've been assuming, we had all the absentees were getting mailed to either the home address or that mailing address that are public record. But we find out that there's a statute that explicitly allows you, when you request an absentee, that you can specify a third address to have your absentee sent to, just your absentee. And that same statute excludes from the public record that mailing address, the absentee mailing address. So essentially, think about that a minute. No citizen in Florida today is allowed to know where the absentees are being mailed to. Right? So, as y'all heard, there was a court case, I forget if it's in the slideshow later on, I might be getting ahead of myself, but it's pretty important here. There was a court case out of Miami. Guy's name was Garcia, and he was chief of staff for a sitting congressman who was up for re-election in 2012. And he was caught. Long story, Miami Herald caught him requesting 1,800, it wasn't great, but it was Garcia, caught him requesting 1,800 absentees over the web. One guy, 1,800 absentees over the web. Okay? And he dead to rights, and so he pled guilty. Anybody want to guess how many days, what kind of, I gave it away just then. Yeah, exactly. What his penalty was? 90 days. 90 days for requesting it, and then he only served 62. But my big question is, where did he think he was going to mail those absentees and get away with it? Right? Well, you and I don't have a right to know where, because the law says we're not allowed to know. So we got like 40 different items that we've identified in the law. This is the biggest one by far, but there's others that are really close. You'll hear about a couple of them. But we're working with our legislators from the Hillsborough delegation to try to affect the change. And that's another one of the reasons that we're going out statewide here, is to make other people aware, let other people know what's going on or what's not going on, and to get this stuff fixed. Because there's some legislators, as we're presenting this to our delegation is starting to talk about legislators in Tallahassee and not the other side. They're talking about legislators in Tallahassee who will have a problem fixing this. They won't want it to get fixed. And of course, is there a valid reason? I haven't heard anybody mention a valid reason for not letting citizens see the mailing addresses. And just so you know, there is one that comes up regularly about safety, as far as like judges or policemen or stalking victims or domestic violence. Those folks, there's already a law in the books that excludes their private information from the voter roll. So for the 2 years, 3 years I've been getting voter rolls statewide and in the counties, I haven't seen, you get asterisks for those people. You don't even know who they are, depending, oftentimes. And so there's a population of those already on there, already covered by another law. So this exclusion of the absentee mailing address has nothing to do with someone's safety, right? It's just hiding information about it. It's hiding information about our elections, and with absentee ballot use on the rise, it's a prime candidate for theft, for ways for people to steal the elections. So another example of some things in Hillsborough: 10,000 registrations in Hillsborough that lack an apartment number. So these are registrations that have a street address for an apartment complex, but they lack an apartment number. I asked, how many apartment numbers do you think the utility company lacks? Right? None. That's right, because their cash apparently is more important than our vote. Right? Now, the lawyers and everybody that I've been talking to tell me that the definition of a legal residence doesn't specify in law that an apartment number is required. So we got plenty of supervisors who say, that's fine, we won't collect them. We won't require an apartment number. Well, where do those, if 50 of those absentees show up at an apartment complex, where do those absentees show up? At the postman, he doesn't know what box to put it in? Right? An extension of that one is the next bullet: no legal accountability for absentee ballots sent to facilities. So universities, nursing homes, you can read the list there, rehabilitation centers, if there's not a hard address for the postman to hand it to, or a mailbox to set it in my mind, that's a vulnerability, right? You could have somebody in that organization where, folks that no longer live there, a rehab center or a nursing home, and they've moved on, and the absentees are still coming, and they're grabbing them, right? And there's no accountability in law at those facilities. And here's one: the poll workers and poll watchers. I would imagine Duval's like in Hillsborough. If somebody walks in and says, hey, I requested an absentee, and it never came. Right? What happens here? Do they log that? Do they record it? Do you know the frequency of how often that happens here in Duval? My guess would be no, because it's not required in law for that to be recorded. In Hillsborough, it's water off a duck's back. They say, oh, no problem, just sign here. And I see it happen 10, 15, 20 times a day. Well, where are those absentees? Is the post office really messing up that bad? I mean, it's just too many questions to let them go ignored, in my mind. The reverse could be true. You may have heard this one, where somebody will come in and they'll be told, well, you were sent an absentee. And I've heard this one a bunch of times too, and our poll watchers in Hillsborough, where you were sent an absentee, and the person says, no, it wasn't. I've never requested one. Well, our records show we mailed you one. Well, it never came. Well, again, it's okay, well, here, do your provisional or vote normal, whatever the situation is at that moment. If it's early voting, they look on the computer and see if that one's been voted. So if it hasn't, then they'll let you vote normal and mark you voted. But if it's day of, they might force you to do a provisional, right? And again, it's not getting tracked. There's nothing in the law, nothing proactive to be able to monitor that stuff.